Welcome back to the deep dive. Our mission here is always the same. Take big, complex source material, the articles, the research, the books, and give you the sharpest, most actionable shortcut to true understanding. Today, we are tackling a concept that makes one of the most audacious claims in self-development philosophy, that it can solve every conflict in your life.
That is a massive claim indeed. And it comes from a source that is, respected globally in the fields of leadership and personal effectiveness, Stephen Covey. We are pulling insights primarily from his work on the third alternative mindset, a philosophy he champions as the only truly sustainable way to move past conflict.
And we need this desperately because, honestly, life feels like one giant competition.
Yeah.
From a young age, we're sort of conditioned for a binary world, success or failure, winner or loser. Think about that pervasive cultural pressure, the comparison to the neighbor's kid. That sets up the ultimate framework. If they win the approval, you lose. If you win, someone else is implicitly losing.
Exactly. Our cultural default is zero-sum. We are locked into a competitive duel. When friction arises, whether it's a global negotiation or just deciding where to eat dinner, the choices appear so limited. We accept my way or we accept your way. And the emotional, the strategic cost of this binary thinking is just enormous. It leads to these cycles of resentment, compliance, or, outright defeat.
So our mission today is to break that mold. We're going to unpack the third alternative, understand precisely what it is, and crucially, what it absolutely isn't. It's not compromise. Then we're going to walk through the 4 structured, non-negotiable steps that lead you to what Covey calls our way.
And if we're talking about a true deep dive, we have to start with the fundamental building blocks. The third alternative isn't magic. It's a system built on conscious effort. It requires 2 core ingredients: creativity, the willingness to look beyond the existing options, and synergy.
Synergy is a word that gets tossed around a lot, especially in business circles. It's almost become a buzzword. Let's define it sharply here for our purpose.
Absolutely. Synergy, in this context, is the collaborative effort aimed at achieving an outcome that is superior to what either party could have envisioned alone. This is critical. It's not just 2 people working together, it's the idea of emergence. The final solution is fundamentally different from the initial inputs.
So it's an invention, not a negotiation.
That's it exactly. It means 1 + 1 = 3, or, maybe 5.
Okay, let's establish the terrain we're trying to escape. The sources define 3 main choices when we're faced with friction. Let's start with the one most of us are probably most comfortable wielding. My way.
My way is the power perspective. It's defined as, I win, you lose. This is the default in any relationship where there's a hierarchy or where one person feels they have superior leverage. We see it everywhere.
Like a manager with a subordinate.
Right. The manager dictates terms to the subordinate. The parent delivers a non-negotiable ultimatum to the child. It's about the immediate non-shared satisfaction of exerting control and just getting your immediate need met.
But the cost of my way has to be steep, right? If you constantly choose this, what happens to the relationship?
Well, the relationship becomes transactional. It gets built on compliance, not commitment. The other party eventually develops this hidden resentment or passive-aggressive resistance. You get short-term compliance, sure, but you completely destroy long-term trust and any potential for collaboration. The source of conflict might be resolved for a moment, but the underlying friction is just amplified.
And then choice number 2 is the painful opposite. Your way. This means I lose and you win.
This is where we see acquiescence. Sometimes it's strategic. You might concede a small point to win a larger battle later on, but more often it stems from genuine fatigue, feeling overwhelmed, or, believing you lack the power to assert your own needs effectively.
You just give in.
You just give in. You let the other party have their way just to end the immediate conflict and secure some kind of peace.
Just like my way, your way, carries a huge psychological cost.
A massive cost. You feel defeated, you feel marginalized, and you start to internalize this idea that your needs just don't matter. Both my way and your way are zero-sum. The pie remains the same size, and someone always leaves hungry.
Which brings us to the goal, the entire point of this deep dive. The third alternative, which is our way, the win-win scenario.
And this is where we really need to pause, because the sources are absolutely emphatic about this. The third alternative is not compromise, and this is a major psychological hurdle for people to overcome.
Why is that? Compromise sounds so reasonable. Why is it actually the enemy of the third alternative?
Because compromise is built on sacrifice. You both start at 100% desire, and you meet somewhere in the middle, maybe at 50%. You've both given up half of what you wanted.
So it feels fair, but nobody's actually happy.
Exactly. While that sounds fair and balanced, it's often a 50-50 split of disappointment. It means you settled for a lower quality outcome just to resolve the argument. Covey insists that if you start from a place of settling, you kill the spirit of creativity. The moment you accept good enough, you stop searching for great.
So the third alternative demands that we find a wholly new solution, one that is superior, where both sides genuinely feel they've gained, maybe even more than they originally sought.
Exactly. It requires active, deliberate collaboration to find that superior, that emergent method.
To make this concrete, let's turn to the fantastic illustration the sources provide. It's about blending music and math class in a school setting. This is such a relatable modern conflict.
It really is. The friction arises because the school administration, often under pressure for academic advancement, decides to remove non-essential electives, in this case, music class. And they do this to prioritize core subjects like Chinese, English, math, physics, chemistry. The goal is clear: higher test scores and better university placements.
And we have a child who loves music who is just heartbroken. The mother, when she hears this, has an immediate visceral emotional reaction, which the source identifies as rage.
And that right there is the pivotal moment. Her initial instinct is pure my way. How dare they take this away from my child? I am going to fight the administration and demand they restore the class.
Which would have set up a huge fight.
A huge fight. If she acts on that rage, she sets up a conflict where the school, motivated by budget and test scores, will likely become incredibly defensive. It just becomes a duel.
But she doesn't. She suppresses the rage. This is the first, often unseen, necessary step in the entire process. Emotional control.
Precisely. That control is the unlock. She steps back and recenters. Her true goal isn't just to fight the school, it's to ensure her child maintains contact with music.
So instead of my way, which is demanding restoration, or your way, which is just accepting the cancellation, she initiates the third alternative. She approaches the teacher, but not with demands, with an invitation for collaboration. She asks, can we co-design a class that incorporates music while still teaching the core math concepts?
Now, the dynamic shifts entirely. The teacher, who is probably expecting a confrontation, is instead offered an opportunity to innovate. This is the seed of synergy. The moment they start talking, they realize a profound truth. Music theory is inherently applied mathematics.
It's the language of fractions and spatial reasoning. I mean, think about it. A piece of music requires precise division of time. 2/8 notes are equivalent to 1/4 note. That's a fraction.
That's exact.
An octave is a logarithmic progression. Rhythm involves splitting time into these precise integer ratios.
The structure, the timing, the harmonic relationships, it's pure math applied beautifully. The teacher, who might have been struggling to make math concepts engaging, now sees a path to elevate the core subject.
And the result is an emergent outcome. They didn't compromise. They didn't give the child half music and half math. They created a single, elevated course where the child learns music theory deeply by mastering mathematical principles. The school achieved its goal of prioritizing math, and the child maintained musical development. Both parties gained something better than they thought possible. That is the essence of our way, achieved through creativity and synergy. That example perfectly illustrates the immense potential payoff of this mindset. But let's get into the practical application. How do we, mere mortals caught up in the heat of a conflict, which is often far more emotionally charged than a curriculum change, how do we actually execute that creative leap?
Well, Covey provides a specific, structured roadmap. These are 4 essential steps, and they have to be followed sequentially. If you attempt to skip step 1, step 4 is, well, it's unattainable.
The roadmap is see myself, see you, find you, and synergize with you. Let's start with the absolute foundation, the most internal and perhaps the most difficult step. See myself.
The core principle here is agency. It's the ability to choose your response, regardless of the stimulus. If you let emotion, anger, frustration, defensiveness, fear, if you let that dictate your action, you immediately lose sight of your true desired outcome.
It derails that whole principle of starting with the end in mind.
Completely.
I think we need to dive into the psychological difficulty of this step. When someone provokes you or blocks your goal, the emotional response is immediate and often overwhelming. How does one practically maintain control when the stakes are so high?
It starts with recognizing the moment of choice. Viktor Frankl, the famous psychiatrist, he talked about the space between stimulus and response. In that space lies our power to choose. Emotionally mature individuals recognize the feeling, that spike of anger. But they understand that the feeling is information, not instruction. You realize your primary purpose is not to vent, it's to achieve your goal.
Going back to the music mother, her real purpose was the child's development, not winning a bureaucratic fight. If she had indulged the anger itself would have become the objective, the need to express outrage, to seek justice. And that would have slammed the door shut on the creative solution.
And this is why the advice from the source is so pointed, almost brutal. If you don't have the capacity to clean up the mess, don't carelessly indulge your emotions.
That's the gut check. It forces you to evaluate the consequences. If I lash out now, what's the relational damage? What administrative or social fallout will I have to repair tomorrow? If I don't have the emotional or practical capital to fix that mess, I have to pause. The discipline here is immense.
It is the ultimate expression of an internal locus of control. You stop blaming the external world, the teacher, the system, the person who made you angry, and you focus on the only thing you truly control, your reaction. We see this power of agency illustrated perfectly in the anecdotes about Stephen Covey's son, David Covey.
Right, first, the university course selection incident. David wants to enroll in a popular course, but he's blocked. The reason is purely logistical. The classroom has 120 seats, and they are all accounted for. The system just said no.
And most people, they hear the classroom is full, and they feel frustration, they feel defeated, and they accept that no as an immovable boundary. They give up their purpose, which is gaining knowledge, because of a temporary logistical roadblock. They focus on the feeling of being wronged.
But David, he prioritizes his true purpose, getting the knowledge, and he immediately shifts to problem solving.
Yeah.
He doesn't waste energy arguing the rule. He identifies the core obstacle: lack of a seat.
And his solution is so elegant in its simplicity, and it shows this profound internal agency. He convinced the school administration to let him attend by bringing his own folding chair to class.
He solved the logistical problem that the institution had defined as a policy problem. He transformed an impossibility into a possibility by creating the missing resource himself. He didn't ask for special treatment. He just showed unwavering commitment and solved the resource limitation for them.
The second anecdote highlights this same level of agency, but in the context of academic despair, a health education test. David scored poorly on the written portion, and he was facing a potentially damaging grade.
The teacher, maybe seeing David's competitive nature, offered a very physical challenge. Run 400 meters in under 55 seconds, and the grade would be replaced with an A+ cent. That is a significant athletic requirement.
It's setting an extremely high bar. A common reaction here might be denial or anger at the teacher for the perceived unfairness, or just giving up because the task seems too difficult given that immediate feeling of failure. But David did the opposite.
He focused entirely on the desired outcome, the A+ cent. And he didn't just meet the challenge. He ran the 400 meters in 52 seconds, 3 seconds under the requirement.
The insight is constant across both scenarios. When you're faced with a roadblock or a setback, seeing myself means understanding my true purpose. The A+A, the knowledge, is far more important than succumbing to the feeling of being stuck or unfairly treated. Only when you maintain that self-control are you truly ready to look outside yourself and move to step 2.
So if step 1 is about mastering our own internal chaos, step 2 is about clarifying our view of the person we are in conflict with. The core principle here is recognizing the other party as a living, breathing human being, an individual, not just an object or an adversary defined by some convenient label.
Right. When emotions are high, it's cognitively easier to reduce the other person to a stereotype. That label becomes a stand-in for complex understanding. Once you label them, whether it's the obstructionist bureaucrat, the radical, the difficult client, or the impossible teenager, you justify your anger, and you remove the burden of having to truly empathize or listen.
You essentially stop negotiating with a person and you start fighting a caricature.
Exactly. And the bumper sticker incident provides a perfect, immediate demonstration of this psychological leap.
So this involves a friend of Covey's who is driving, and suddenly they're subjected to intense road rage. A motorcyclist pulls up aggressively, demanding the driver roll down the window, cursing loudly, making aggressive gestures. The driver is likely terrified and confused, wondering what critical error they made on the road.
But the conflict wasn't about driving technique or a near miss. When the motorcyclist vented his rage, the source of the fury was shockingly abstract. It was because the car had a bumper sticker featuring a political figure the motorcyclist vehemently opposed.
Let's slow down on this psychological mechanism. To that angry rider, the friend ceased to be a person driving a car. He instantly became a political object, a target of hatred, an embodiment of the opposing faction. The label was the fuel for the rage.
The label permitted the dehumanization required for that level of aggression. The motorcyclist didn't feel he was swearing at an individual, he was attacking an ideology attached to a vehicle. This is how conflicts escalate globally, organizationally, and personally. We often see the uniform, the political affiliation, the job title, or the stereotype before we see the actual human being with unique fears, dreams, and values.
And the sources connect this to even seemingly harmless, everyday labeling like using astrology or blood types to define character, saying someone is fussy because they're a Virgo or schizophrenic for being AB type. We use these shorthands to quickly categorize the world.
And that shorthand immediately prevents genuine interaction. If I enter a negotiation already convinced you are fussy, I will interpret everything you say through that filter. I'll look for evidence of fussiness instead of listening to the content of your concerns. That is prejudice. And prejudice, no matter how minor, makes the third alternative impossible. To truly see you, I have to let go of all my preconceived notions.
Okay, so we've established the emotional groundwork with see myself and the perceptual framework with see you. Now, step 3, find you. This is where we engage with the other person's reality, and the goal is dual-pronged. Lower their emotional reaction and uncover their true underlying need or value.
This step hinges entirely on deep listening, a skill that's far rarer than most people admit. Covey defines this as using empathy to establish connection. And the critical technique is reflecting their emotions and inviting them to communicate more deeply.
Reflection is so vital. It doesn't mean you agree with the action they took or the position they're arguing for, but you validate the feeling behind it. If they're speaking with heat and frustration, you might say, "It sounds like you're incredibly frustrated because you feel your efforts aren't being recognized."
And that reflection has to be sincere enough to achieve the key outcome, getting them to nod. Just a simple nod, signaling, yes, you understand my pain. Once they feel understood, the emotional energy they were using for defense or attack immediately dissipates. They can finally lower their guard.
And the practical advice here is blunt, but necessary. Shut up. Listen more, talk less. If you dominate the conversation with your perspective, your justifications, or your demands, you just reinforce the idea that their needs don't matter, and you never uncover the true, often hidden, drivers of their position.
Let's apply this to a complex workplace scenario. A salary negotiation. A subordinate enters, perhaps aggressive or highly emotional, demanding a 20% raise.
The traditional win-lose boss reacts defensively. My way. No, the budget won't allow it. Your way. Fine, take 5%, but don't ask again.
But the boss using the third alternative doesn't negotiate the number immediately. They pause, maintain their agency, that's step 1. They see the employee as a valuable asset, that's step 2, and then they ask, tell me about yourself. Help me understand why this raise is so important to you right now.
Through deep listening, through the art of asking open-ended questions and reflecting their feelings, the boss starts to realize the subordinate isn't just seeking money. They're seeking validation, recognition for increased expertise, and, most importantly, they are willing to take on significantly greater responsibility to create more value for the company. The money is a symptom of a deeper desire for growth.
Suddenly, the goals align perfectly. The employee wants a raise. The company wants increased value and output. The conflict, that immediate demand for 20%, is replaced by a common purpose. They can define a mutually beneficial path, a defined, expanded scope of work, clear performance metrics, and a commitment to achieving that 20% raise based on the new, higher value they will deliver. That is synergy just waiting to happen.
That transition from demand to dialogue is amazing. Now let's look at the highest stakes scenario in the sources. A family conflict involving a daughter and friends who are using drugs. This situation is fraught with fear and panic.
Parental panic often leads to immediate accusation, which only drives the child further into secrecy. Covey's analysis suggests that children often display abnormal behavior precisely because they are seeking parental attention or connection, even if they express it through resistance.
So the father, instead of saying, stop hanging out with those terrible kids, he applies step 3. He uses validation instead of accusation.
The father reflects her presumed difficulty. He says something like, it must be incredibly difficult and painful for you too, having friends who are struggling with drugs. He doesn't minimize the situation, but he validates her experience within it.
This shifts the dynamic entirely. It moves from an interrogation of the daughter's morality to an empathetic engagement with her internal struggle.
And by continually reflecting her feelings and showing genuine, non-judgmental concern, the father reaches the point of consensus. The daughter finally opens up and admits, yes, it is painful for me to watch my friends use drugs. That shared acknowledgement of the difficulty, the consensus that the situation is bad, is the necessary prerequisite for collaboration. It means they are now aligned against the problem, not aligned against each other. And that door is now wide open for step 4.
We've navigated the emotional landmines, overcome the labels, and listened deeply enough to find the other person's true needs. Now we enter the phase of creative invention. Synergize with you. We are ready to collaboratively design the better way.
This is the execution phase. We're not just trying to achieve a truce, we're trying to invent a superior solution that is optimized for both parties, knowing exactly what matters most to each.
And the sources structure this final creative step into 4 actionable substeps to make sure the synergy is intentional and documented.
Substep 1 is inquire. This is the official invitation. You have to explicitly ask, are you willing to search with me for a solution that is better than what either of us currently sees? And because you've successfully executed the first 3 steps, the answer, fueled by mutual respect and understanding, is almost always yes.
Substep 2, define. This is where clarity is essential. We have to clearly establish what better means for both parties. For the father and daughter scenario, better for the father means ensuring her safety and separating her from the drug use. Better for the daughter might mean maintaining supportive connections with her friends, honoring her loyalty without sacrificing her own path.
Substep 3, create. This is the active brainstorming, generating executable solutions that satisfy both definitions of better. It's critical here that both parties contribute to the list of possible actions. For the daughter, this might involve defining boundaries like, I can meet my friends for homework, but not for parties. Or, I will encourage them to seek help, but I will not put myself in situations where substance use is present.
And finally, substep 4, achieve agreement. This is finalizing the details of the win-win outcome. It has to be specific, measurable, and owned equally by both parties. The result is an agreement that moves far beyond the old I win you lose framework. It is the optimal result for both parties, built on mutual respect and shared creation.
The beauty of this sequential approach is that the first 3 steps build the necessary psychological safety. You can't just jump into creative brainstorming and to synergize when one person is still emotionally reactive, a see myself failure, or feels they are negotiating with a label, a see you failure. The structure protects the creative process.
So we have the roadmap, but we have to discuss the critical caveat here, the pitfall of assumption. You can follow the 4 steps perfectly, secure consensus, and still fail if you assume that what you value is what they value.
This is a subtle but profound danger. Step 3, find you, helps us understand their needs, but we often project our own internal measurement standards onto their needs. We assume that because we value metric X, they must also value metric X.
This brings us to the famous 2 apples anecdote, which brilliantly illustrates the difference between achieving a consensus goal and using different standards to measure it.
In this scenario, a mother holds a large apple and a small apple. She intends to test her 4-year-old daughter on the concept of sharing, expecting a lesson similar to various cultural traditions, like the Confucius example, where the virtuous person willingly gives up the larger prize.
The mother has 2 anticipated outcomes, and they're both judged by the standard of size. Either the daughter chooses the small one, which is generosity, or she chooses the large one, which is greed.
But the child acts completely outside the mother's framework. The girl immediately bites both apples.
And the mother instantly assumes greed. She's trying to keep both for herself.
Yeah.
The mother's standard of value is size and ownership.
Right, but the child's true intent is revealed when she hands the smaller, already bitten apple to her mother. The mother is, understandably confused or even a little offended, thinking she's being given the leftovers.
But the 4-year-old, using a completely different standard of measurement, explains her action.
She says she tasted both apples, discovered the smaller one was sweeter, and wanted her mother to have the best one. Her standard was sweetness and quality.
What a profound moment of realization. Both mother and daughter shared the same consensus goal: give the best to the other person. But their standards for defining best were radically different. The third alternative has to be robust enough to uncover which metric the other person is using to judge success, not just what their objective is.
And this realization, that true synergy often requires a paradigm shift in standards, leads directly to the concept of raising the dimension. If 2 positions seem fundamentally opposed, we have to pull the perspective higher to find a unifying third principle that makes the original opposition moot.
So this involves looking beyond the immediate disagreement to a higher, more abstract value that integrates both of the opposing ideas.
Yes. Stephen Covey was greatly influenced by this idea, referencing the book Unraveling by Sumac, which used a compelling historical example. The core conflict inherent in the French Revolution's famous rallying cries, liberty, equality, and fraternity, which is often translated as love.
Okay, so liberty and equality, initially, they appear to be mutually exclusive. If I am granted absolute freedom, liberty to pursue my own wealth and goals without restriction, that will inevitably create socioeconomic inequality among people.
And conversely, if we enforce strict equality so everyone has to have the same resources and outcomes, my personal freedom, my liberty is severely restricted because I can't act differently or achieve more than anyone else. They seem locked in this perpetual zero-sum struggle.
So how does the third alternative resolve this deep political and philosophical tension?
By introducing the third rallying cry, love or fraternity, as the guiding higher dimension. Love is the principle that integrates and elevates the two opposing concepts.
Let's analyze that integration. How does that work?
If I act freely, if I seek liberty, I do so informed by love, which means I must consider whether the other person has the same capacity for freedom. My liberty, guided by love, demands that I ensure my pursuit of freedom doesn't inherently oppress or disadvantage others.
So the exercise of liberty through love leads naturally toward equality.
Exactly. And on the flip side, if I seek equality, I do so because I love the other person and believe they deserve the same opportunities and state of being that I enjoy. This pursuit of equality, guided by love, ultimately seeks to elevate everyone to a state of freedom and optimal potential.
So love acts as the emergent principle. It's the necessary context that dictates how we apply both liberty and equality. It shifts the debate from a zero-sum struggle over which concept must dominate to a shared value creation where all three concepts can coexist harmoniously.
That is the true power of raising the dimension, finding the third, unifying principle.
That is a much more robust, complex definition of synergy than simply collaboration. It's about achieving a philosophical reconciliation.
Precisely. It is the mindset that allows us to move from settling for a 50-50 compromise to realizing that 100% of my need and 100% of your need can be fulfilled in a new 200% solution.
This deep dive into the third alternative mindset reveals it is far more than just a simple technique. It's a profound, structured discipline designed to transform every relationship and conflict we encounter.
It demands hard internal work before you even talk to the other person. Let's quickly consolidate the 4 steps that lead us to that synergistic, our way outcome, recognizing that the payoff is worth the effort.
Step 1, see myself. Drop the emotion. Use the power of choice to focus on your ultimate desired outcome, not on temporary anger. If you cannot clean up the mess, do not indulge the emotion.
Step 2, see you. Remove the labels. Project political, social, or personal stereotypes. See the other party as a complex, unique human being whose needs are valid, even if their position is currently opposed to yours.
Step 3, find you. Engage in deep, empathetic listening. Reflect their feelings until true consensus is established about the pain or difficulty they are facing. Uncover the underlying need, not just the stated demand.
And step 4, synergize with you. Collaborative creation. Work together through the process of inquiring, defining, creating, and agreeing to invent a better, superior solution that elevates both positions simultaneously.
What stands out to me is the universal applicability. This framework, the conscious choice to pause, the commitment to ask, and the discipline of truly listening, it applies to everything from a school curriculum fight to high-level diplomatic negotiation.
It offers a path to a sustainable future, locally and globally, by moving us past the ingrained idea that conflict must result in loss. It requires us to become creators of solutions rather than reactive judges of circumstances.
So here is the final provocative thought for you to carry forward, building on that complex idea of the higher dimension. If liberty and equality require love to coexist, what is the third unifying principle, the love, that is currently missing in the most entrenched, intractable conflict in your life? What is the higher dimension you need to discover to make the opposition obsolete?
The third alternative is not about getting your way, it's about inventing a way that elevates all parties. The work is in the discovery, but the reward is moving beyond compromise and into a truly new dimension of creative possibility.
That's it for this deep dive. We hope the shortcut helps you find our way more often.